What's up? It is Freaky Friday. Welcome on into Let's Bet It. Lauren Jabara here with Jared Smith. Let's Bet It presented by Superbook Sports. All right, we are in week one, Jared, of NFL season.
We are.
We had a game last night.
Factual
I
statement.
got some hate on social media.
Yes,
People
you
said
did.
they're going to fade my picks. I wonder
Yes,
how
they
that
did.
worked out for me yesterday.
Didn't work out great.
Baby. Let's go.
Didn't work out great for the Faders last night. Didn't work out great for the Rams last night.
Did not work out great for the Rams last night.
No, but I will say this. I wish I had a live camera on your situation after the Bills marched down the field on that opening drive and put one in the end zone very fast.
No. You
fast.
have no idea. I literally was like, I was sweating. And it was like, there was like 10 minutes left in the first quarter. And I'm like, oh no, it's already 7-0. Crap, I am screwed. And then when the seconds ticked down to 0 after that first quarter, I had myself a nice glass of red wine. Just saying. And then we were waiting for the Stephon Diggs touchdown. And I texted you after that one ball slipped through his fingers. I'm like, oh, no. And then you texted me the second that he caught that 50-yard touchdown pass. I know. And then Matt Stafford finished the deal and threw for over 23.5 completions.
Garbage time.
Night. Football this season so far, Jared. College, I went 3 for 4 last weekend. NFL went 3 for 3 so far on day one. So we're feeling pretty good. I mean, at some point there has to be regression, but I'm riding the high at least while it's here. You know, there will be.
There will be. Enjoy it. Savor it.
Thank you.
Eat your red wine and your fancy cheeses and enjoy it, because there will be a point in the season when it goes the other way.
Oh yeah. Totally.
You just have to buckle up and enjoy the ride, because if last night's any indication, there is going to be a lot of things that take place this weekend that surprise us. There were some things last night that surprised me. There were some things last night that didn't surprise me. I am still searching desperately to find something good in the box score for the Rams. I literally pulled out like my monocle and my magnifying glass, trying desperately to find something positive to take, because I think based off of my timeline last night, the Bills already won the Super Bowl. Like let's just stop the season right now and it's over. Buffalo's the best team on the planet. Josh Allen's the MVP. The Bills, I mean, we need to not get ahead of our skis here, because it's one game.
No.
And
here's the thing.
It's tough to grade too much off of one game.
Yeah. We talked last season, obviously, about week one, people not necessarily knowing what to expect with some of these teams. Week two, we see a lot of the overreactions with the sports books, because it's like, is this the regular of what we're going to see from these teams? So week one, you could take advantage of some of these bookmakers because they don't necessarily know what to expect. Like, speaking of the Eagles going up against the Lions, are the Eagles too overhyped? Are the Lions overhyped after watching Hard Knocks? Who knows? And then we'll see in week two some of this Monday overreaction for some of these teams and how the books adjust to that. But let's talk about our Thursday Night Football reactions. You mentioned it. The Bills right now look like they just won the Super Bowl. Their defense picked up where they left off last year. They had 7 sacks. Von Miller with 2 of them against his former team. The most sacks allowed in McVay's tenure with the Rams ever that he's allowed is 7. The Bills in general just looked really good. Stafford, I don't think there was anything necessarily wrong with his elbow. His arm is just bad. We saw this when he played for the Lions too. Last season with the Rams, he threw the most interceptions out of any quarterback in the NFL. He led the league with 17 interceptions. Guess what? He had 3 last night. I mean, didn't look good. You look at Josh Allen, absolute stud. Threw for 297 yards, accounted for 4 touchdowns. He also ran for 50-plus yards. As a team, they went 90% on third down. That's how you're going to win these games. The Rams could not keep up with Josh Allen, his playmaking, or the Bills' pass rush. And the Bills looked like a Super Bowl contention team at this point.
Yeah, those numbers are really tough to ignore. I saw similar things in the box score last night when I was diving in. And so what I like to do in situations like this in week one, here's a glimpse behind the curtain into my process. And this is not a process that's very original. It's something I've, piggybacked off of from a lot of sharp bettors that have given me this advice over the years. When you look at week one, instead of trying to find positive things for the teams that dominate, try to find negatives, because that will then temper your expectations and it will recalibrate your mind as we get into week two. So yes, the Bills looked fantastic. 63% success rate on passing plays. That's absurd. But that number gets cut in half to 32% on their rushing plays last night. So let's try to poke some holes in what the Bills did. Well, they looked fantastic in the air. Josh Allen is an MVP candidate. But if you take away his running game, the Bills only ran for 65 yards on 15 carries with their other running backs combined. I think there will be a drop-off with Josh Allen's leg.
Had as many rushing yards almost as all of the other running backs combined? Damn.
Yes. And as impressive as that is not sustainable for 18 weeks. He will end up on a stretcher getting taken off the field at some point. So that is something to keep in mind when the Bills move up in class. I don't want to say that move up in class, from the Rams, but let's be honest, the Rams, this was something we talked about yesterday. Their defensive line was a little thin. Outside of Leonard Floyd, not a lot of experience or depth at that position. They were manhandled last night. I don't know if the Bills are going to have that easy of a time when they face a team that can contain Josh Allen a little bit better. And when he's in mid-season form and he's not running it 10, 15 times a game. I think that is where I could see some regression with Buffalo as we move forward. They have 11 days off until they have to face the Titans next Monday night. Is that too much time for this hot offense to cool down a little bit? I don't know. Again, I'm trying to find things to temper our expectations on Buffalo because we want to just overreact and crown them the champs and bet them in next week's game, blah, 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 blah. But overreaction in week one is a thing. Let's also, though, not underreact to Von Miller because I think that adds an element to Buffalo.
He's so good. Unbelievable.
And again, the advanced numbers tell that story. He had a pass rush win rate last night of 47%. He only had one game the entire 2021 season that eclipsed that. He had 2 games eclipse that in the playoffs, which tells you how good and how effective he was in getting the Rams and winning the Rams a Super Bowl, helping win the Rams a Super Bowl. That is an element to Buffalo's defense they did not have last year. That is an element to their defense that I think if they had Von Miller in the game against the Chiefs, they might be in the Super Bowl, and we might be talking about them as the defending champs and not the Rams. So in my mind, I put Von Miller on the field in that Bills-Chiefs game, and that game goes very differently, I think.
Oh, yeah, totally.
And so that's where I'm at with the Bills. You have to give them their due. You have to not underreact to what we saw on defense, but I don't want to overreact to the offense because I think it was a bad matchup for the Rams. Let's go to the other side. I'm trying really hard to find something good in the Rams.
Yeah, about the Rams. Yeah.
Besides Cooper Kupp, who was fantastic. That's the one diamond in the rough here. Cooper Kupp was fantastic. Listen, the Rams had a 40% success rate overall, only 38% success rate on early down passing plays. That is putrid. Putrid. Early down passing plays should be your biggest, highest success rate because the defense isn't expecting it. You would imagine you have a good scheme to push the ball down the field on early downs when the defense is expecting run. But 10 days off till their next game against Atlanta, who's coming off a divisional opponent, in a tough game. I think we're going to see some positive regression for the Rams. So again, let's not underreact to what we saw last night, but let's not overreact and crown the Bills Super Bowl champs already.
The Rams just didn't seem ready for what the Bills had to offer. I feel like they kind of undervalued the Bills in this situation. Like, yeah, we just won the Super Bowl. But it is a thing, right? The Super Bowl curse, I guess. It's like teams come off, they're riding a high. They just won one of the best trophies out there. And now you're facing arguably the best team in the NFL in the Bills. And one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL in Josh Allen. One of the best defenses in the NFL in the Bills defense. And maybe they saw the new offensive coordinator and Ken Dorsey for the Bills, and they're like, maybe, we're not going to get as much power out of them. Maybe they're trying to adjust to a new playbook. Guess what? The Bills, in my opinion, did not miss a beat. I'm excited to see what they're going to be able to do next Monday night against the Titans, because I think that they're going to absolutely crush it and blow that game out of the water. We have some big NFL matchups going into next week. First of all, the Packers taking on the Vikings. It's going to be the two of the top teams. Hopefully the Lions are up there too, but for the top of the NFC North, the Packers 1.5-point favorites in this spot. Aaron Rodgers making his debut without Devontae Adams. What are you expecting from this Packers-Vikings game? I know we're going to have a full breakdown on Sunday with our first ever Week 1 NFL show, but just early thoughts about Aaron Rodgers going up against Kirk Cousins and the Vikings.
So I teased the Vikings to 8. That was in the column that dropped. Best bets column that dropped on Pickswise.com yesterday. I used it as my key teaser. I have 2 teasers this week. Okay. Vikings are in both of them. And again, I won't give away the full farm here. Go to Pickswise.com, read. You'll find out who the other 2 legs are, because we're not talking about either of those games right now. So I think it makes sense for me to tease and not give it all away. Tease the teaser. Vikings from 2 to 8. Listen, I think the key with Minnesota is their offensive line. And listen, you're going to hear a lot. You're going to hear me digest. I'm going to analyze more offensive line play this season than ever before, because I think it is more impactful than ever before.
Yes.
As the offenses,
the trenches are where the games are won. The trenches 100%. Are where the games are won.
Absolutely. And I think when we get forward in the season, the injuries will become more of a thing. But the offensive line is always front and center. I think there's a lot of positives about the Green Bay offensive line. David Bakhtiari, from what we're hearing, is healthy. Elgton Jenkins is going to play in his first game since tearing his ACL last year. Bakhtiari, I feel like, has been on the injured list for ever. Only played in 27 snaps last year. Every time I turned my head, he was questionable, and then he didn't play. He's going to play this week. At least that's what we're hearing. On the other side for the Vikings, I told you their offensive line, to me, is the biggest spot that needs to be improved, because Christian Darrisaw last year was 25th out of 34 tackles in pressure rate allowed. That number needs to improve. They chose Garrett Bradbury over J.C. Tretter in the offseason to play center. Tretter ended up retiring. He was on the Browns, wanted to play in Minnesota. The Vikings said no, didn't even return his call, and they ended up going with Garrett Bradbury, who, to me, is a step down. I don't know what that center position is going to look like with Bradbury this year. I think that's going to be something to keep a very close eye on, because the Packers do have a really good defense. That is, in my opinion, the Packers with Aaron Rodgers, that was the identity. I think this year their new identity is going to be defense first. Their secondary is elite. Alexander, Douglas, Amos. I think they're going to be a little bit thin at defensive line. It's ironic because Zadarius Smith leaves the Packers, comes to the Vikings. I am a big, big fan of what the Vikings are doing defensively. I think their defensive coordinator, Donatel, a Vic Fangio guy, has a lot of positives working in his favor with scheme and now with personnel as they get Zadarius Smith. So this is going to be a tight game. I think these teams are very evenly matched. I think Minnesota has the edge at skill position, but Green Bay's got a great secondary. I think the Vikings probably are a little bit better defensively than they were last year, and the Packers maybe a little bit worse offensively without Devontae Adams. So there's a lot of conflicting matchups here. I think teasing it from 2 to 8 is the most ideal play in this spot. I see this game being close. Home divisional underdogs have been fantastic in week 1 over the years, and I think this is going to be a really good game.
I'm so excited for this one. Battle for the top of the NFC North in week 1.
Yeah.
And hopefully the Lions get a win over the Eagles. I know you're high on the Eagles this season. We'll talk about that game on Sunday. Another big game that's going on, the Raiders taking on the Chargers. Obviously, we all know how that game ended up in week 18 last year when the Chargers got knocked out of the postseason against the Raiders. They're going to be coming into this game with a little bit of a chip on their shoulder. I am still so high on Justin Herbert. 2 big games in LA this weekend between last night and then this Raiders-Chargers game. That's going to be an interesting one to look at too, don't you think?
Yeah, make no mistake about it. This is not a home game for the Chargers. The Raiders, so when I talked to Superbook Sports, our sponsor of the show, Casey Degnan, the risk supervisor, he's going to be a huge addition to. He did a little stuff with us last year, but my weekly columns and his insight from behind the counter is just it's huge. It's very important. He basically has a point and a half for home field advantage last night for the Bills. Rams game, because Bills Mafia was out in full force last night at SoFi, and it's kind of the same whenever a California team, and let's be honest, the Raiders fan base still very much rooted in Oakland, and Los Angeles, frankly, is going to be invading SoFi again for this game. So home field advantage is not a factor. That's why you're seeing this line hover in the 3 range, where I think if you asked, the average sports fan, the average NFL fan, who's the better team right now, Raiders or Chargers? I think everyone would say Chargers with Justin Herbert. At least that's what I would say, especially with the Raiders offensive line being in shambles. And I think the edge here matchup-wise is, goodness gracious, the Chargers get Khalil Mack in the offseason, who's got the 3rd highest wins above replacement of any defensive end since 2019, according to Pro Football Focus. One of the only 2 guys with a higher wins above replacement mark is on the other side, Joey Bosa. So Crazy. You've got these 2 just unbelievable defensive ends up against a Raiders offensive line that, let's be honest, mediocre would be kind. So I think that is an edge to keep a very close eye on in this game. What does the Raiders offense look like with all these new shiny toys if they can't keep Derek Carr upright long enough to find them? That's curious to me. On the other side, listen, Justin Herbert's fantastic. Really hard to poke holes in his game right now. And I think as long as Brandon Staley can figure out what's going on defensively, which is supposed to be his strength, this is a Chargers team that is going to be at the top, contending for an AFC West divisional title this year. I think this line's curious at 3.5, even closer to 3. I have a feeling it probably moves towards Chargers this weekend, but I expected this line to be a little higher. So this is a little fishy line for me.
Yeah.
I'm not betting this game, but I would lean Chargers laying points.
Can Brandon Staley coach the players that he has to the level that they could hit? And that's going to be an interesting fact to look at. Let's talk a little bit more about week 1. Bring in our very own Ben Solak to chat week 1 best bets. He's NFL staff writer for The Ringer, and you can hear him on The Ringer's new Philly special podcast, which I'm so excited to start listening to. Ben, how are you? Happy Friday. Happy week 1. It's like Christmas. Christmas in September. I was going to say Christmas in July, but it's definitely September. So
it's definitely September. No, it's always good to be back. It's fun to have a day like yesterday, even if the game wasn't as maybe competitive as you like for it to be. It's still fun to get the ball back out there, play regular season football, and now we look towards Sunday.
Yeah, look towards Sunday. It is week 1. We just talked about 2 of the big matchups. Obviously, the matchup of the Packers-Vikings for the top of the NFC North, and then the Chargers coming into that game against the Raiders with a little chip on their shoulder. When you look at the week 1 slate, what games stand out to you, and how are you kind of betting and navigating week 1 in general?
Yeah, the level of home dogs is freaking me out, right? That's weird. We don't typically see that. And you guys were talking, obviously, before I came in about how home field advantage gets priced. Over the last few years, we've seen that home field advantage has not been what books have thought it to be. Home teams generally are not covering super well. And so to be sitting with a couple home dogs like I am, I like Atlanta to cover against New Orleans. I like Dallas to cover against Tampa. Kind of freaks me out, but this is week 1. You kind of are wading into uncharted territory. And so it's unit management. It's going off of your preseason power rankings. Then it's trying to learn quick and adjust quick.
How about this one? Because it backs up your claim here. Home teams 44% ATS in week 1 since 2014. Home teams have not been winning or covering, really, and that's the key. Wow. Covering at a rate that people expect, because we use that as our argument all the time. Home underdog, home this, home that. It doesn't mean as much, doesn't have as much starch as it did in prior years. Maybe it's travel's getting easier. Maybe it's the home field advantage in general. Teams are becoming more, I don't know, communicating better at the line of scrimmage. I don't know. There's a million reasons that we could give, but the data actually does back up the fact that home teams have underperformed over the last few years. All right, Well, this is one of the questions we had here in your segment. Are the Eagles too overhyped? I will frame it for you this way, Ben. I bet over 8.5 wins very early in May, actually, after the A.J. Brown news took place. It's moved up to 9.5 now. I can see why people wouldn't want to bet over 9.5 wins at this rate, but it's hard to deny how good the Eagles roster is. Where do you stand on Philly for this season?
The Eagles are overhyped. They are, because I'm an Eagles fan. I've seen Eagles teams before. I know how this goes. You know what I'm saying? This is not unfamiliar territory here. Are they still better than 9.5 wins? Probably. We shouldn't take too much stock in preseason strength of schedule evaluation. That's always tricky to do. The world is going to change in 3 weeks. There's going to be an injury here. There's going to be a surprise team there, and all of a sudden strength of schedule kind of goes wonky. So we shouldn't care about it too much. But the Eagles do have a projected pretty soft strength of schedule. They do have an NFC East that you can say pretty comfortably is going to be weak, even if like one of the Giants or Washington surprises. It's not like the other one's going to surprise. And so you have, I think, the opportunity to get a high regular season total. The other thing that feels nice about over 9.5 for the Eagles is that whenever you're betting over on a regular season total, you're really worried about injury luck, right? All it takes is a couple injuries, the team goes down, and then your bet's pretty much dead in the water. The Eagles are not quarterback reliant. They are in the sense that they run like a quarterback run game, like Jalen Hurts is a big part of their rushing attack. But when they put Gardner Minshew out there, this team still worked last season, and that's because the roster is what's really good. So unlike, if you're taking it over on the Chiefs or over on the Chargers, and your quarterback goes down, that bet's pretty much dead in the water. It's possible that the Eagles survive a Jalen Hurts injury and still come away with 10, 11 wins, depending on when it is in the season. So it's a couple of injuries now that would have to be at specific positions, at stars, at one position, and kind of deteriorating your depth in order to really have the injury train take over this bet. So like over 9.5, I think is still good. Obviously, it's better if you got in on the 8.5. With that said, the Eagles are, still overhyped. That's too much.
Yeah, there's a lot to expect from the Eagles this season. They're going up against my Detroit Lions in week 1, which have you watched any of the Hard Knocks this season? I still have not. I'm
here we
until
go.
the full season is released. Okay, let me have my moment with the Eagles.
Trying to get the Lions into the show.
I love Mr. Campbell. He's doing up downs with his players. How do you feel like this game plays out here in week 1 if you were betting the Eagles-Lions game?
Yeah, so Eagles took the Lions to the woodshed last year. The Lions want to believe that they're better on both sides of the ball.
They are better.
I'd love to believe it. I'd love to buy it. I was there in camp. I got to see them, and they certainly look improved. However, the Lions built both their units, offense and defense, through the trenches, right? They want to be an offensive line team on the offensive side of the ball and then a defensive front team on the defense side of the ball. The Eagles also did that, and they've done it better and more successfully. So you're looking at when the Lions beat teams, they beat them because they win in the trenches. It's very hard to win in the trenches against the Eagles on either side. That's before like the Frank Ragnow injury. Ragnow very unlikely to play. The Lions star center, Jonah Jackson, right guard, unlikely to play in this game. So if the Lions beat you, they're able to beat you with the rushing attack in that front. I don't think that happens against Philadelphia. They could get some movement in the passing game. I think that Hawkinson and Swift out of the backfield are going to have good games. The Eagles' linebacking core is pretty weak, but I think they're going to struggle to move the ball down the field. And then defensively, they want to be able to stop the run with just their front, and that lets them put more bodies into coverage. It doesn't fly against Philadelphia. The line is too good, and they have too much of a variety of a rushing attack with Jalen Hurts and with a staple of backs. And even if you do take the wind out of the running game sails, I don't know yet who their guy against A.J. Brown's going to be. It might be Amani Oruwariye, which is a fine player, but I don't think he's A.J. Brown's caliber. And it might be Jeffrey Okudah, who they're really, really, really hoping is ready this season. But again, that's unproven, right? We don't know that. We're watching him come off injury. And so it's tough to see a way that the Lions, the way they built the team, match up against the Eagles. So spread-wise, I like the Eagles in this game. I like A.J. Brown props in this game. I do think that the Lions will be frisky this year. There's just not the team against which to do it.
Hey, I appreciate the positivity, though. I appreciate the positivity with my Lions, honestly.
Listen, they're going to have one of the best O-lines in football. I mean, Decker, Jackson, Ragnow, Sewell, excuse me. They are going to have one of the best offensive lines in the league. The problem is the rest of their roster is really bad. So you can't score and defend with the O-line as well. So that's going to be the key. You definitely nailed it, Ben. I think it's the secondary with Okudah and Oruwariye. I always butcher his name. That's going to be a very important part of their season. Because, again, if you can't stop the run, maybe they can be a little better at that category this year, and you can't defend the pass, their defense was so bad last year, and they didn't make a ton of additions. All right. I always tell people I don't need to watch reality TV every week because I got the NFL. And the NFL gave us 2 gems week 1 that are just dripping with drama. I will start in Seattle with the Monday night game. Russell Wilson returns. We're seeing let me check what seeing the market is this morning, because maybe something popped overnight. But no, it's still kind of hovering in that 6 range. It opened at 4.5, 5. So, we saw a little bit of money come in on Denver. Does Seattle have a chance to keep this close, or is Russell Wilson going to just cook his way through the Pacific Northwest on his way to a win against his former team?
Yeah, absolutely. Seattle's a chance to keep it close. You want to beat a team that's better than you, spend a whole decade studying their quarterback up front in person in your building, right? The way that Pete Carroll has talked about this game implies that he feels confident that defensively Seattle is going to be able to match what Denver brings. We saw some weird week 1 results last year. Think about like the Saints blowout of the Packers. Think about the Bills, the Bills losing to the Steelers. Because when you have a couple months to game plan, you can really build this thing out. You can make a bespoke game plan. Seattle is not intending on winning the NFC West this year, not intending on pushing for the playoffs this year. They're going to get some young guys out there. They're going to develop. It's a little bit of a reset year. They do want to beat Russell Wilson in week 1 in Seattle. That matters to this team tremendously. This is a very dramatic breakup that happened over the course of a few years. It's going to be an emotionally charged game for both sides of the ball. If this were in Denver, 6.5 makes a lot more sense. This is in Seattle, which is a very, very difficult place to play. Russell Wilson has never played here as the hostile force. I think this is ugly. I think it's low scoring. I think Seahawks plus 6.5 is fine. I like under 44.5 better. And honestly, for my money, I'd prefer taking the money line straight up with Seattle. Spread wise, I think you're fine. But I think if this is low scoring, I think it's a game that favors Seattle. I think it favors their running attack. Would not be surprised if we get an upset week 1.
Wow, I actually really like that. I'm definitely tailing you on the under in this one. When you look at the other games here in week 1, what are some of the best bets that you have that you can kind of take advantage of? Maybe some of these, books that don't necessarily know what to expect from some of these teams yet here in week 1.
Yeah, the unknown expectations are important ones. I think when I go through and I look lines-wise, I think generally we have pretty good prices. I think Atlanta at 5.5 is a little bit too low. That's been hit and moved up over the course of the season. But I think the Saints are an incomplete team. I know there's an excitement and a reason to believe in them. But I think defensively, inevitably, you're going to get a step back because of the loss of the safety rooms. I think offensively, I know that we really want to believe that Jameis plus Mike Thomas back, and this is just going to look like it used to. Sean Payne's not there anymore. Drew Brees not there anymore. Teron Armstead's not there before. Like the pillars of this offense over the last 5-6 years are gone. I'm not going to give them that much of a benefit of the doubt as some people are. And so I like Falcons plus 5.5.
Yeah.
The Jets offensive line is banged up. They brought in Dwayne Brown to replace left tackle. Looks like he's not going to play. They're in a spot where they might be starting multiple rookies on this offensive line. That Baltimore line is still hanging underneath 7. It's heavy juice on 6.5. I'll be a sucker and take it if you're going to let me get the hook. I think that Baltimore walks the Jets around the park a little bit. And then in terms of that newness, right, there are 2 receivers who are new teams this year that I think aren't getting priced correctly. That's A.J. Brown with the Eagles and Christian Kirk with the Jaguars. A.J. Brown's receiving yard total is about 66.5. Christian Kirk at about 55.5. Christian Kirk opened at like 48.5 too. I think by October, you're not getting A.J. Brown lines in the 60s, and you're not getting Christian Kirk lines in the 50s. I'd be surprised if those numbers stay that low. Both teams are paid guys huge money, spent huge capital to bring them into the building, and there's very little competition for wide receiver 1 targets in Jacksonville, and even in Philadelphia, where you have Devontae Smith, you have Dallas Goedert. All reports out of camp is that this is an A.J. Brown-centric offense, that anytime they need a bucket, they go to Brown. So I think you're going to see high volume for both of those players. I think those lines are priced too low, and they're going to have to move up over the course of the season. So get them while they're hot.
Yeah.
Really, really, really sharp pro bettor told me this once, and he's like, if you ever repeat this on the air, I'll kill you. But I'm not going to say who it was, so it's not going to out him. But the prop numbers in week 1 are wrong consistently because they're based off of last year's averages. So, and I saw this last night, the Cooper Kupp anytime touchdown took more money than the Rams did, like the spread. Like, we are at that point in this evolution of gambling in this country where the props are, I think, beatable and more just more fun to bet, frankly, than the sides and the totals. So something to keep in mind when you are creating your prop card for this week. We've got some really good prop handicappers here on Pickswise.com that can help you. All right, futures bets before we let you go, Ben. What big picture? What are your takes for the season? Maybe give us a Super Bowl winner if you feel so inclined, sir.
Yeah, absolutely. So the same players that I brought up in AJ Brown and Christian Kirk are also underpriced season long. I'd rather just take the week one stuff and not have the exposure to like injury and whatnot. But I've looked at those guys receiving prop wise. Trey Lance rushing prop is too low. He's going to get used a ton. In terms of your over-unders and your team totals, I'm fading the Saints. The Saints getting up to 9, I think, is too rich. I think that the NFC West is going to be tougher than people realize, not just with Tampa, but with Atlanta and Carolina, both being plucky-ish, not great, but the NFC South tends to play itself really, really tough, right? And so I think that the Saints are going to have a tougher road to hoe than people realize. Jaguars over 6.5 is one of my bigger spots for the year. The Jaguars division plus 750, and then Trevor Lawrence MVP, I haven't checked, but Lawrence MVP was plus 7,500, I think, when I got it. I don't know what it is now. But you're basically correlating all this out. If the Jaguars are winning more than 6.5 games, then they're at least winning 7. It means they're going to be in the playoff hunt late. Tennessee, I think, takes a step back, and Indianapolis has shown us that, they can cycle in new quarterbacks and win 10 games every year, but they haven't shown us they can win more than that. So I don't have a reason to believe that Indianapolis is going to be like a dominant 12-win team. You look at the fragility of that passing core, you look at Gus Bradley defenses over the last few years, there's holes in Indianapolis. And while I think that we generally understand that having anybody at head coach is a boost over having Urban Meyer, I don't think we realize just how much of a drain on the Jaguars win total Urban Meyer was. They won 3 games last year. No team with a quarterback of the caliber of Trevor Lawrence, who was good last season, he was a rookie, but he was good, should win 3 games. That's hard to do in the NFL, to have that good of quarterbacking and only win 3 games. The Jaguars spent a ton of money, and a lot of the money they spent was like a little bit wild. I don't think you or I was trying to give $20 million to Christian Kirk or give $15 million per year to Foyesade Oluokun. But the reality is that the players are better now. Even if the contracts are too much, the roster is improved. This is a good roster with a good second-year quarterback. That team should not be priced at 6.5. So I like the Jaguars to go over their total, and I do think they're frisky for the division. You're getting them at like 7-1. That to me is a silly price. So that's a fun flyer if you like it. Super Bowl wise, I didn't bet the Bills, though I think the Bills will win it because I'm not going to bet like the third worst Super Bowl preseason odds since 1960 or whatever the heck it was. But Chargers right now to come out of the AFC are still the team I think is underpriced. Got it earlier in the year, but still at this point, I think that when you look at complete rosters in the AFC, the Chargers have far less holes than the Bills. It's just how much do you trust the coaching staff? You guys were talking about this a little bit to get over the hump. I think it's a good coaching staff. I think they will, but believing in the Chargers has long been a fool's errand, so be careful.
Ben, we so appreciate you. I actually really like the Chargers. Last year, I bet on Justin Herbert to win MVP. Obviously, that didn't work out well, but I got it 20-1 at the beginning of the season. I love him. I love him. It just depends on how Mr. Brandon Boy is going to coach that team up, if he can actually put the pieces together that he has on that team to be able to win some games. But I'm really looking forward to seeing what the Chargers are going to be able to do throughout the season and also in week 1. Ben, we so appreciate you coming on the show. Thank you for giving us your knowledge, your insight. I'm sure we'll be talking to you throughout the NFL season.
Sweet. I appreciate it. Y'all take care.
You too. Have a great weekend. That was Ben Solak, NFL staff writer for The Ringer. You can hear him on The Ringer NFL show and The Ringer's new Philly special podcast. Also follow him on Twitter at Benjamin Solak. He's great. Love that. Let's take it from men to boys, Jared, because you are not going to be on the show tomorrow. It is me and Zeno, but we do have college football week 2. I'll be giving out most of my picks tomorrow morning on the show. I'll give out one pick today just to wet the whistle a little bit, but I'll let you go through your slate just so we can have some of your picks and people could lock them in, win themselves some money heading into week 2 tomorrow.
Yeah, overreaction week. We're a week ahead in the college schedule than we are in the NFL. So this is one of those weeks where we try to see if the market moved a little too much. Let's start with a game where I think the market did move a little too much. Georgia State, UNC. You guys have been around the block with me. This is our second year doing this. Yeah. I love fading teams after their biggest wins like ever, or their most exciting wins ever, or rush the field wins, or whatever, absurd, exciting moment that took place the week before. My contrarian brain says sell. That's how I feel about UNC. Arguably, maybe, I hope not, but arguably the most exciting game we've seen in recent years. and maybe the most exciting game of the season. 63-61, they beat App State. Their offense was incredible. But now they have to go to Georgia State, which is a very different animal than App State. App State is a spread it out, kind of a, I don't want to say a gimmick offense, but they're not as physical as Georgia State is, which just runs straight downhill, and they like to pound it right down your throat. They ran for over, I think, actually, no, right at 200 yards, 5 yards per carry against South Carolina, an SEC defensive front. Say what you want about South Carolina. Those dudes are big, they're fast, they're physical. They might not be as talented as other teams in the SEC, but Georgia State, little old Georgia State out of the Sun Belt, ran it for 5 yards per carry against South Carolina over the weekend. They lost the game by 3 scores, but they gave up 2 blocked punts for touchdowns, which skewed that number a little bit in a direction to where South Carolina covered the spread. Now they're laying, UNC is, over a touchdown on the road at Georgia State. I think this is a good spot to grab Georgia State. I got 8, 7.5 ideal, 7 obviously less than ideal, 6.5 I would stay away. In fact, if it gets back down to 6.5, which is kind of where it opened, I might actually buy back on UNC and try to get a UNC by 7 and do a middle. But I like Georgia State anything over a touchdown. Colorado and Air Force. So I'll be honest, this line moved a ton. I got it at 45 to the over. It's at 49 now. I'd be a little hesitant here. I got a DM yesterday asking if you could still buy at 49. I would put a half unit on it at 49. These two defenses are atrocious. So I don't understand how this number opened so low. 45 is actually a total in college football. 5th most landed on total in college football over the last few years. So again, that's why it's moved up significantly. Air Force 10 yards per play against Northern Iowa, 55% success rate on offense, and Colorado's defense was shredded by TCU. And there's nothing good to say about Colorado. They are atrocious in the back, and I think Air Force is going to just triple option methodically, get every first down on 3rd and short, and just grind this game down and probably put up a 30-burger at least. And so that means we only need Colorado to put up 17 points, and we're going to hit this. So Colorado Air Force, I think, goes over. Your boys, Notre Dame, laying a big number at home against Marshall. I don't like laying massive numbers again with teams that haven't won yet and haven't really won under Marcus Freeman, 0-2 in his first 2 games. But those 2 games were on the road against top 10 teams. I give them a pass in those spots.
And they had good performances. Last week against Ohio State was great.
Covered the spread.
Especially on the defensive side, I will say. The fact that they were able to hold Ohio State to 7 points at halftime, I was very impressed with their defensive game. I know C.J. Stroud wasn't necessarily at the top of his game, but it still is impressive against one of the best 3 teams in college football.
I agree. It helps, too, that Jackson Smith-Njigba, probably the best receiver in the country, was out for giving him part of that game, too. But listen, Marshall is a very different team than Ohio State. Marshall Marshall hasn't faced a Power 5 team in 4 years. They have lived in the non-Power 5 group with their schedule. In addition, Rasheen Ali, their best player, is probably out here. He took a leave of absence from the team unexpectedly 2 weeks ago. Didn't play in the opener against Norfolk State. Probably isn't going to play this week. That's a huge loss. Now, Marshall ran it all over Norfolk State last week. 380 yards. They're not going to do that against Notre Dame. It's not going to happen. So this is a spot for Notre Dame to get right. It's Marcus Freeman's first game in South Bend. He's 0-2 as the head coach. They have looked good, but not great. And this is a spot for him to put his foot down and say, I'm the head coach. I'm here. We're going to be a good team this year. I think Notre Dame blows out Marshall. All right. My 2 favorite bets of the week. These are both 1.5 unit plays. I'll start with one that, I'll be honest, people are going to call me an idiot for betting Iowa this week, but I love Iowa this week. I'm crazy, right? They were awful against South Dakota State, who, by the way, we gave out last week plus 13, plus 14. But South Dakota State is legit, people. So Brad Powers does a great job with his power ratings for college football. He has South Dakota State rated higher than 50 teams in the FBS. They are not your average FBS team. They are a team that can defend up front. They got a ton of pressure on Spencer Petras. They shut down the Iowa running game. I don't think Iowa State, who is very thin and very inexperienced on defense, is going to be able to have that much success against Iowa's front. Also, there's the embarrassment factor of Iowa getting booed off of their home field against an FCS opponent that I think is going to play into the motivation this week. Brian Ferentz, the offensive coordinator of the Hawkeyes, needs to have a better game plan. I'm calling you out, Brian. Nepotism runs deep in the sports world. And I think the only reason this dude still has a job is because he's Kirk Ferentz's son. He needs to be better with his scheme. The buy low factor is why I love this pick. 2 weeks ago, you could have walked into the South Point here in Las Vegas and you could have bet Iowa State plus 13 in this game. After one data point, it moves 9 points. And it goes from 13 to now 3.5. That's too many. That's too big of a move for just one game for Iowa. I am going to bet the Hawkeyes this week and hope that they have a better performance in the Cy-Hawk Trophy. Very important game. Need to get more push up front. Need a better game plan from Brian Ferentz and Kirk Ferentz too, frankly. All right, final game, and this is our buddy Todd Furman gave this out on his Bet the Board podcast yesterday, and I love this pick. I love this pick so much. Baylor catching 3 and a hook at BYU. So Baylor won this matchup last year. I know. And I was shocked at this number. And I think it's because of how good BYU looked last week against USF. And they did. They looked fantastic. 8.8 yards per play. But they now face a Baylor front that returns basically everyone from their front four last year. And that dominated this game up front in Waco, 38-24. They outrushed BYU in this game, 303 to 67. I mean, I don't understand how this line is as high as it is. My guess is it comes down to 3 or 2.5 by game time because I think Dave Aranda is one of the best coaches in the country that no one's talking about. I think Baylor's front four is elite. I think BYU is going to have some problems getting some push up front. The one weakness I could see for Baylor is in their secondary. But BYU's top 2 receivers are both injured. Gunnar Romney, injured in preseason, questionable this week. Puka Nacua left the USF game with an injury as well. He's going to play this week, but again, not 100%. And I think that's where Baylor is going to take advantage because their one weakness in the secondary is not something I think BYU can fully exploit. So I'll take the 3 in the hook, and I'll be honest, money line sprinkle here because I think the Bears are live.
The Bears be growling, Jared. You love to see it. We'll see you on Sunday. Excuse me, on the show tomorrow. Going to be doing your radio show with Fox Sports. Thank you for going through the slate with us. The game that I'm looking at, Alabama versus Texas, I like the over. I got it at 64. Now it's at 65.5. I bet it up to 66. Alabama's going to score on everyone and anyone this season. I'm not too worried about them holding up their end of the bargain on this one. Texas, Steve Sarkisian, Quinn Ewers, they have the fate of this bet in their hands at this point. They should have a good enough scheme and talented enough players to be able to move the ball against Bama. Bama is the best offense in college football, enough to be said. Texas is top 10. This bet is going to come down to how efficient Texas is in the red zone. They can't waste scoring opportunities. I obviously struggled with a bet like this last week, betting the Georgia-Oregon over. Georgia held up their end of the bargain. Bo Nix, or otherwise I like to call him Bo Picks, absolutely ruined that one for me because we were 2 point short of hitting the over in that one. But I'm going back to the well with one of the top 2 teams in the SEC. Going over the total. I think Alabama is going to be able to push this over a lot by themselves. I think it's going to be like 46 to 20 something. But I do feel pretty good about this over. I have a whole slate of bets I'm going to be going through tomorrow on the show. So make sure to tune in for our college football week 2 show. It's going to be me and Mark Zinno. Let's Bet It, presented by Superbook Sports. It's the best place to bet football this season. Download the Superbook Sports app or visit superbook.com now. And they'll match your first bet up to $1,000, guys, whether it wins or loses. Plus, they already have lines up for every NFL game for the rest of the season. Come on now. Get in after it before some of these overreactions happen heading into week 2. The #1 voted sportsbook in Vegas, now available in the palm of your hands. Visit superbook.com to sign up. Love it having the sponsor, Superbook Sports. Make sure to check them out. All right. Before we get into our best bets of the day, Jared, Pickswise.com. Quickly, 3-star play of the day. Who do we got?
Oh, we got a lot today. I'm going to be probably tailing Keith Schmelter's total in the Guardians-Twins game because we all know how just money Schmelter is when he gives out a 3-star play. So that's on the list. Wise guy, Matt Weisenfeld, Blue Jays Rangers run line. That's looking juicy too. Mark Lammy's got an Angels Astros run line bet. And yeah, that's all I'll give you today because the rest of them are tomorrow. So there's 3 baseball picks on the site right now.
Love it. Check them out. Words. Whoa, I think I just had like a short-circuited for a second.
You did. Hold on. We need to reboot Lauren. I need to hit the reset button. Control-Alt delete.
Seriously, though, what the heck just happened? I just short-circuited. What the heck? That was wild.
You're actually a robot.
Pickswise.
That's
Pickswise.com. Check out the 3-star play of the day. Win yourself some money. Because we haven't talked any baseball today. Both of us have a nerfy for you heading today. I'll start with mine. No runs first inning. The Dodgers taking on the Padres heading into San Diego. And you're like, what the heck? You're betting a no-run first inning on 2 of the best offenses in the league? Yes, it is only priced at -118. I'm only laying 18 cents for it. The Dodgers have Dustin May on the mound. He's only making his 3rd start of the year, but guess what? He hasn't allowed a run in the first inning in each of his first 2 starts, and one of those is on the road. Then you look at the Padres. They have Mike Clevenger on the other side. He has to shut down an offense that is the Dodgers. He's only allowed a run, though, in the first inning in 2 of his 17 overall starts, and he's 6-0 on the road in terms of not allowing teams to get a run in the first inning in 6 games on the road that he's pitched. Now, I know the Dodgers are an extremely tough offense to go up against. They've been the best in Major League Baseball in scoring in the opening inning. 35% of first innings on the road they've scored in, 37% of first innings overall. But they have been held to no runs in the first inning in 9 of their last 10 games. Now, you look at the Padres offensively. They've scored in 27% of first innings at home, 24% of first innings overall. But they've also been held scoreless in 8 of their last 10. When I looked at this value of this, it should be priced closer to like -200, -220. But we're getting it at -118, laying 18 cents for it. Why the heck not? I feel pretty good about it. So Dodgers, Padres, no runs, first inning. You have a nerfy for us too.
I do, and I full send on your nerfy. Dustin May is a nerfy machine. Love it. So I'll probably be tailing that one as well. So sadly, I knew that I would totally jinx the Marlins team total under the second I got involved. Luckily, we got 1 win under our belt before the Marlins exploded for 6 runs last night. That being said, the reason that I am not giving it out today is not for lack of care, but for lack of information. The Mets starter is TBD. I will likely be betting the Marlins team total under again tonight, but I would like to see who the Mets are starting before I hit submit on that bet because tough to bet on a team total under before you know who is starting on the other side. So we'll hold off on that for now. That's the disadvantage with doing the show in the morning. But I do have a nerfy that I like tonight, and it popped really hard on my sheet. Cardinals, Pirates. It is Miles Michaelis, who's 20. He's had a great season. 22-6 nerfy record this year. 13-2 on the road. All the data red across the board in terms of under red. Usually on my sheet, green, over, red, under. That's kind of the color code I go with. So Miles Michaelis is red across the board, which is good for the nerfy. On the other side, Roansy Contreras, this dude has had one hell of a year. 13-0 nerfy record. Can't get any better than that. Limited exposure against the Cardinals lineup, which I love. 0 home runs in just 26 plate appearances. Obviously, Paul Goldschmidt can wreck this thing. I'm going to be sweating in the top of the first inning when Goldschmidt comes up to the plate. Hopefully, it's 2 outs, base is empty, and Contreras can kind of pitch around him and go after Arenado, but we'll see. I will say this. The Cardinals scoring rate drops significantly from 41% at home to 26% on the road, this game being played in Pittsburgh at PNC Park. But the Pirates are just a bad scoring team in general. They have the second lowest scoring rate at home in the first inning this season at 19%. Cardinals played last night at home, get on a plane, have to go to Pittsburgh. Not a huge deal, but worth mentioning in case they're a little bit groggy. Night game, then they have a little bit of an early start time today. It's like that 6:30 start time Eastern. So I don't know, probably isn't gonna factor in, but I'll give it to you anyways as extra information as we hammer the Pirates, Cardinals, Nerfy. -120 over at the Westgate. Our friends over at Superbook
Love
Sports. Price there.
No run, first inning. Both of us. No run, first inning. But no more picks for us today. Find us on the Pickswise YouTube channel. Go pickswise.com. Follow us on Twitter. Jared Smith, Lauren Jabara. Best of luck tonight, guys. We'll be back tomorrow and Sunday for Week 2 college football, Week 1 NFL. We'll see you there. Let's get it. Let's bet it.